Ba-da-ba-da-da-da. I miss Tally. I want to bring Tally back. My name is Charlie McGrath. I am the founder of WideAwakeNews.com, joined by co-founder, co-host, Doug Owen, BlacklistedNews.com. You are listening to Doomcast, Doomcast number 79 on this 22nd day of February 2015, Sunday. Another Sunday show, Doug.
Another one. We've made it. We've arrived. And
No. I'm saying I'm complaining. I'm complaining about that.
It's so hard, to make those Wednesday, Thursday shows happen. You would think that we initially thought that we wouldn't have, that much going on, but apparently we do.
Well, February is ridiculous for me. I mean, I spent a week in Denver, a week in Portland. I was home last week, and now I'm going to be in New Orleans for to round out the month. So, and the places I've stayed. Well, in Denver I couldn't. I was in the hospital down there, but in Portland, I thought, well, I could just do the show from the hotel room. I couldn't. I would have had to use my cell phone as a hotspot.
Oh yeah.
And because I was on the road, it was already a gig past the data plan. So
you're limited. You don't have the never-ending.
Well,
package.
The problem is you call some of these hotels, right? And you say, "How's your internet speed? How's your connection?" And
wonderful. It's great. It's the best. You're gonna love it.
Ever. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it takes 20 minutes to load Drudge.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, that sucks. Why are you going to Drudge? I guess if you use Drudge as a metric, it's just text links and
right.
3 or 4
So it should be fast.
Should be pretty fast.
Yeah. Or My Way, that website you follow. Are you over there once in a while? Aren't you? MyWay.com or whatever. Mm-mm. No advertising, no anything. Just the headlines. And he's proud of that, so he puts a little banner up there to tell you how long it took to download to load the page. And that takes 5 minutes. Anyway, enough of that complaining. I am staying in DoubleTree Hilton, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, in New Orleans. I fly down tomorrow night. We'll be there until Thursday. Fly back, get home at about midnight on Thursday, at 11 o'clock on Thursday. So I'm really, how's your Wednesday? How's it looking this week?
Oh man, I don't know.
Yeah,
that's too far forward. I got through a pretty busy weekend and a pretty power packed and somewhat kind of week. We talked last week on 78 about 78 about my letter that I was writing to employers.
Right. Did you have feedback on that?
Oh, I haven't sent it out. I just read it. And I actually stayed up that night till 2 a.m. writing it and got up several times because I couldn't sleep. And I felt better about it writing it, and I haven't sent it yet, but I might. It's there. It's in my drafts. It could be sent at any moment, but
if those didn't hear Doomcast 78 and Doug's letter,
you should go back and listen to it.
Go listen to it. It's. And just in a nutshell, he was writing a letter to his to everybody, actually, his superiors and his subordinates and his peers on the warrants of or merits rather of tracking vehicles, fleet vehicles, and basically becoming Big Brother. And Doug wrote a very good letter, I thought. He read it on air, so go back to 78, check it out. But I think my advice then was just be prepared for whatever consequences come of it. And then if you are, who cares? What are they going to do?
Well, yeah, and that's where you're at with any of those scenarios. Or I could just wait till somebody says something, and if they do bird dog me, they're going to write me up and fire me at that time. So, one way or another, you're going to end up probably at the same spot if somebody wants to go there and wants to, draw that line and, go after you. Because really, here in Texas, it's a right to work state, so they can pretty much fire you for just about anything, but it has to be something, and it can't be for something that is discriminatory. So you can't discriminate against me. You can't fire me because I'm transgendered, but you can fire me because of, I don't know, my hygiene or any other reason, as long as that's what you say. But, it could be, reducing force reduction. You can just make up pretty much anything you want. So,
right.
The question, of course, is I know that most of the people listening appreciate their personal independence and privacy. I think a lot of you do. But does the general public or the people that would be receiving that email cherish it as much? And that's really the question. I showed it to a few people at work, and I'm like, "Al, you know what they're gonna say? You're not doing anything, nothing to worry about, blah blah blah." It's just, people sit around and they enjoy TV shows called Big Brother and peering into each other's lives. So
right.
It's cheap and it's easy and it's prevalent and
look,
popular.
Every tyrannical dictate has always been sold as beneficial and answered naysayers as somebody who has something to hide. And I don't care if it's whatever. It doesn't matter.
That's right. Round up the usual suspects.
Yeah. Or whatever. If you look like Hitler during trying to gain control of Parliament over there, wrote legislation a lot like something along the lines of the Patriot Act, so that it could be sold to the people of Germany, the people of Europe as the saving grace. And it turned out to be it did nothing more than allow the Nazi Party to have over 66% of the parliament, giving him dictatorial power. And we all know how that played out there shortly thereafter. But but everything that was done then, and propaganda from that point till now, and I'm imagining throughout history, it's never sold on the truth of it, which is, we want to spy on you. We want to know where you're at, what you're doing. We want to know how much money you're making, how much money you're spending, how much taxes you're paying. We want to know what you're saying and who you're saying it to. And we want to know the tenor of your conversation so we can figure out if you're a threat or not. And, I guess the way that I would look at it is if I was going to turn in that letter that you wrote, by the way, go back and listen to 78. It isn't scathing. It's an opinion piece. But I'm turning it in. I would have in the forefront of my mind that my whole world at this joint is going to change, could possibly change. Who knows? You might have the CEO come to you and say, "You know what, Doug, you're right. We're not going to put a spy bug in your vehicle."
I doubt that. They're all for it. They want it, and it's not really a question of whether I want it or. And I don't think that I'm going to change any hearts and minds. I'm not disillusioned or delusional, rather, about how receptive people will be, and that's why I haven't sent it out. If I thought that people would, if I thought that I could compel them to really, take a different stance, if I thought that was at all possible, that there was any chance or a decent chance of it, I might have sent it out. But we'll see. We'll see.
So if you send it out, it's just going to be for your own edification. That's it, right?
Yeah. I mean, until this point, anyway. Yeah.
Huh. Well, it's a tough choice. I mean, to be honest with you, I probably wouldn't. I mean, if I was just, if you felt like you could get some of the coworkers behind you and kind of lead this push, then yeah, absolutely. But if it's going to be, you're going to be shunned and no one else is going to speak their mind, even though they might feel the same way, then, you're hanging it out there. And even though it's a right to work state, if you ended up being terminated after that, and with an 11-year perfect work record or whatever, no write-ups or anything like that, it would be almost impossible for them just to let you go. I know right to work states that, they can downsize or whatever, but it's pretty provable.
It's just I wanted to share it with the Doom Nation out there, because a lot of people, whether it's this issue or some other issue, come to this impasse where you have to make some pretty hard decisions, and you realize, it's an eye opener, and you realize the state of affairs and how political opinion is, it has changed, and that's affecting us all. I mean, there's probably a point where people could be critical of their government prior to Hitler taking power, and then there was a time where you could not be critical, and that you would be taken off to a black site. Right now, we could still be critical of our government, but you can't be that critical of your employers. They have the right to pay. So I believe that they do have the right to do this. Ultimately, I don't think it's a matter of if they have the authority. I don't think it's right, but it's something that is directly.
You're talking about they have the right to monitor their equipment.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
if you own a convenience store, don't you have the right to have surveillance cameras? Are you
Absolutely.
monitoring your cashier?
Yeah, absolutely. And last week when we talked about this, I think if you remember, I took the side of the employer because I asked you, is it your cell phone? Is it your truck that you're taking to work? And, if that was the case, that's something completely different. But if you're going and picking up their property, then my actual thought is the people that are sitting in the office for the company you work for, you're out in the field, they're going to experience actually more monitoring, or you're going to not experience any more monitoring than the rest of the people that work in that company. If you're using their equipment. If on the other hand, we talked about stipend. Some people get stipends for phone or for cars, that kind of thing. That isn't the company's property. That is part of your pay package, and they have. I would never agree to it then, because that's my property. It isn't theirs. So if it's yours, it's yours. If it's mine, it's mine. And if it's yours, it's sometimes mine.
Sounds like marriage or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know. Yeah, it's just one of those things. You're going to be monitored if you do service work. You're going to be monitored the second you walk into a building. Anything that I turn in, any tickets for service that I conduct, it has to be somewhat verified. People aren't going to pay or administer funds for things that you're not doing. I could only get away with not doing something for so long and pretending that I'm doing it. So.
But it's for the good. It's for your own good. We'll make your time more effective than. Yeah, I've heard all the crap.
Right. Yeah.
So it allows the phone bank to tell their customers exactly where you're at and how long you're going to be there.
This is the truth. After a year, they're going to find out, and I think they're spending somewhere upwards of $55,000 to $65,000 a year to monitor us. That when budget constraints come, inevitably, that's going to be something that they're going to look at here in a year and say, well, we already got rid of those 5 guys that we wanted to fire that were effing off, and they'll probably do away with it.
Yeah, they'll throw it in the garbage because
a lot of companies. I mean, this company tried to do outsourcing of maintenance and service, and you always have one guy there that's has an economics degree that says, hey, we can save a lot of money. We go to a for-profit system that it's going to be more efficient, more cost effective, and it's like DPP, IP. There's all sorts of gotchas, catches. There's all sorts of things that you don't anticipate, and you don't really have any control. I mean, you can control me. You can control your employee and tell them how long they can go to lunch. And I think I made this equation, but you can't control somebody else's employee. If you're just hiring them and you're not employing them, then you only have so much control over them in what they do. And that could be a good thing because you don't have to worry about their retirement or collecting,
Sure. They're just
Social Security from them or anything else. You don't have to deal with that. You don't have to maybe pay into Obamacare because you have more than however many employees and you weren't able to get yourself an exemption like McDonald's and every other company. So, it's all about ROI, return on investment, and, for them. And people try to cheap out. They try to, this is the thing. If you're a manager out there, you're never going to get over on an hourly employee. And I'll tell you why. Because you can work somebody really long, but you can only make them work so hard. And you can only make somebody do something so quick. And if you try to I push people to the point where you're getting 100% production out of them, you're going to find yourself either looking for new employees or with a big mess, or people that are disgruntled and are, every turn they find a place where they can stab you in the back, they will.
Absolutely.
At every turn where they have an opportunity to not do the right thing, to screw you, to make you look bad, to make your life crappy, they're going to take that opportunity to do that.
You know what? So. One of the you're 100% right, and that goes you're hourly, I'm salary, but it goes that way. And I've known people in rep positions who are they're autonomous, they're not in the office. Maybe they're going in once a week or once a month for some kind of meeting, but they work out of their car and they work out of their home, and they're traveling and going to different cities and visiting customers. And I know people that have done this for years, they'll an example about 15 years ago, a rep bought a gift for one of the clients, and it was I don't even remember what it was. I think it was like a official Texas Stetson hat or something like that.
Ooh, those are highly coveted here.
Yeah. Well, it was going to be a whole prize at a golf tournament, right?
Right.
So he turned it in on his expense report, and they refused to pay it. And they refused to pay it. They're like,
come on, you're bribing people to get some work, and they don't want to
right.
want to scrutinize that.
Exactly. We didn't authorize a purchase like this. And I don't know how much. Let's say it was $1,000 hat. I don't know.
Right.
But he turned it in like 2 months running, and they rejected it both times. And he walked into his supervisor's office and handed him the third month's expense statement and says, "Go ahead and try to find that hat in there now," because it was in there. It just wasn't in there. So he was padding everything he was doing from that point on, which is super simple to do. I mean,
right.
So yeah, I mean, when you're trying to squeeze blood out of a turnip, and I think that's happening more and more in middle class jobs, in lower middle class jobs, even service jobs. It is all about, the metrics. How much can we squeeze out of this person? How many tickets can they write in an hour? How much is the value of this person's tickets that they write each hour? And how can we push for more and more? So it's I guess I don't want to say micromanaging, but it's absolutely surveilling and trying to figure a better system to increase the profit. But I do believe you're right. Inevitably, if you're promoting that kind of workplace, again, your company they have the right. It's their equipment. But if they're promoting that kind of a workplace, what are you going to end up with? You're going to end up with a very bitter workforce that is, standing at odds with management. And, that is in the long run going to be counterproductive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but that's not going to stop people from trying it out, and that's I think a metaphor for a lot of things, You would think that we've seen tyranny before. We've seen the mistakes of other people that have bowed blind allegiance, giving crazy powers to their elected leaders, right, all in the hopes that they will provide them security, which is always a false sense of security and very. I don't know at any time in history where the government has taken power and given it to itself those distinct privileges over the people and not used it against external enemies, but rather on the people.
Never. To answer your question, never. A government has never given itself power, stolen power from the people that they govern, and not used that power at some point, inevitably against their own people. It's never happened because that's what is that is the quintessential definition of corruption in government, right? Is to amass power and collusion between government and industry. It's amassing power and then holding on to that power no matter what it takes. So, you have a Reichstag fire to bring Germany under control of the Nazi Party. To cement that control, all legislation written was sold as this is going to end unemployment in Germany. It's going to bring back the strength of our nation,
right?
And inevitably, you lead to 100 million people dying on the planet. Same thing. I mean, draw a direct parallel with the Patriot Act. We're going to give you safety. We're going to give it to you because you're American and you deserve to have it. And we're just going to steal every bit of personal individual freedom gradually over time and in big chunks at other times. The government that creates the situation for panic and for fear in order to establish legislation and then eventually law in order to, quote, protect its people, inevitably end up using those kind of pieces of legislation, those anti-free legislation, to take from the people their actual property, their lives, their sense of freedom and their actual freedom. It in history always happens. There's no example of it that anybody could give. If you can, call the Doug Owen line and leave that message where a government on this planet at any time ever has given itself power and then not used it.
Right.
It's unheard of.
Yeah, yeah, pretty unheard of. If you can, it's just one microcosmic example, and I mean, I'm sure there's been some benevolent kings and a few good guys out there, people that are able to do the bidding of the people. I mean, I think there are examples of that, but they usually are killed. Okay,
Yeah.
they're assassinated by their own inbred brothers that have Oedipus
Right.
complexes. I mean, we can go through all the allegories.
Yeah. No, I don't mean to keep cutting you off, but yeah. You're right. The All in the Family gang will end up knocking off its own.
Right.
Um,
Or their kids are so spoiled that they end up not cherishing the same or having the same respect for the people that they rule over that their parents may have. And so, it's like, the people out there that would want Ron Paul to be, the president for life. Well, you might not like Rand, when Ron Paul dies, somebody else takes over, and because they've given them the power to be able to create that, benevolent utopia, or as close to it as possible here on planet Earth, that same kind of power and benevolence that allowed that to happen, it ends up being power that is used against the people to hold them in chains in bondage. So, you
well,
got to be careful.
I think when you see major shifts in governance, from kingdoms to parliamentary type governments, it never. I mean, for the benefit of the individuals, it's typically always at the end. Is post violence. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Overthrow, chopping king's head off, chopping queen's head off, and I think the royal blood, which is still alive and well and influential, saw that you can have slaves, and you can have the best kind of slave. It'll be the slave that doesn't know he or she is a slave, and give him a feeling of independence. But in reality, nothing has changed. I mean, the powerful elite families are still the powerful elite families, and the representatives inevitably end up serving the bidding of those families. You and Craig and I were kind of battling it out on Skype or text messages yesterday. In somewhat, I remember a few Doomcasts ago, you and I were talking about, is there a family or a group that is secretly behind closed doors, planning the world and wringing their hands and chuckling. And I think
I'm chuckling now. That's pretty funny. Yeah, I mean there are. I mean there are some very influential families and powerful elites that do have a huge say and at least get a vocal majority at certain tables, and they're very influential. Rothschilds are a great example of that. They're still very prominent today. One of the biggest gold exporters. I mean, Rio Tinto is just one of hundreds of businesses that they own in the financial sector,
Sure.
and have invested and hold much sway over the debts that they have created in bond purchases, and that has led to policies and even the deployment of different laws, sovereignty killing laws, especially in Europe, that are the constraint for them to invest in the infrastructure. And there's a lot of examples of other, the Chinese getting citizenship for investing in a Pennsylvania tollway, those kind of things. But so not to say that there aren't people that are very, very powerful and very influential that definitely they steer power, and by that they are elite in the sense that what they want they are able to buy, and they are able to create because of that power and that power vacuum that they create with their money and with their interest. So whereas you get to vote for somebody
Right.
that you don't like, and maybe this year in 20 or next year 2016 you'll get to realize that we really do live under an oligarchy once we have another Bush and Clinton battling for the White House.
Right. And you will have. You're right. I mean, these power elite, which I truly believe are more than just influencing. I think their demands are being met on global financial issues and other geopolitical issues. We were talking about the war in Ukraine via text yesterday, and my stance then and still is and always will be that everything we see going on including an article I pulled up while I was waiting for my computer to reboot here to start tonight's program. At least 2 killed in blast at 500 strong rally in Kharkov, Ukraine. And this is in the Kiev controlled portion of Ukraine. And it was a color finger mob, marching for peace. Of course, they're marching for peace, 500 strong through the streets of Kharkov. And an IED went off, Doug Owen, in a snowbank that was right next to where this assembly of freedom-loving Ukrainians who just want peace and who are out marching.
What kind of peace do they want? Do they want a
Well, they want
Russian,
the Kiev peace.
These are pro-Maiden, pro-EU.
These are pro-Poroshenko, pro-EU, pro-NATO, pro-West demonstrators. And
unfortunately for them, the U.S. government overthrew their government, and they're just rallying for peace. And the people that they're asking for peace are not they're not very good at delivering peace. They usually deliver weapons, they deliver intel of FBI agents, they're trainers to train and give military expertise to people that you want to kill, or maybe to your military or to businesses that are invested, but they're not good at bringing peace. So
no, it's the exact opposite of peace. I mean,
you can march around and walk in circles all day long, my friends. I'm sorry to tell you that you're not going to get peace as long as you're a puppet state of the U.S. government. So
that's right, and rest of Europe, rest of planet Earth know this, that the International Monetary Fund, Brussels, the EU in Brussels, the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States, the Western powers, they will all talk about peace and how we need stability and how we need rule of law. And if you really want to know what that means, just whenever they talk like that, think of what would be 180 degrees opposite. If they're talking peace, that means they want to kill. If they're talking sovereignty, that means they want to strip you of yours. If they're talking about bailing your country out to help you out, it's the exact opposite of what they're going to do. They're going to come in and they're going to rape and they're going to pillage and they're going to steal your national resources, and you're going to be left holding the bag. So it should be called 180 politics, because it's whatever they say, 180 degrees different is going to be the result. Ukraine just celebrated, had the anniversary of a year of this ongoing civil war, and it is not. I mean, they had this Minsk peace accord that a few countries signed, or 4 countries said we need to get back to that, but it's already turning bloody. It's not even 2 weeks old, and we have Poroshenko wanting to install UN forces now, EU and UN forces on the border between Russia and Ukraine, and that is tantamount to begging Russia to literally invade eastern Ukraine. And who knows if it stops at Donetsk and Luhansk. It's. I really believe, when I was talking to you guys last night, that Russia isn't. It is about Russia, but it isn't. It's about the West. It's about the United States spending $5 billion to overthrow a government, to implement the EU/NATO agenda, to get rid of an elected president, to put the chocolate king in there, to indebt Ukraine, to go after their natural resources in the east, to go after their fertile fields throughout the north and the west of Ukraine. And they're not going to stop until they get it. So this story with the Ukraine, it's not going away. It's only going to continue to get worse unless Putin decides to say it isn't worth any more lives lost for him to send troops and materiel. As soon as it calculates out to him to be a loser, that will probably be the end of it, and you'll see a westernized full Ukraine. But I don't think that's going to happen. It's right on the border, and there's just too much at stake. So I think this will be. It could be a flashpoint in the near future for instead of a proxy war between rebels and Kiev, truly a proxy war for the United States and Russia. Who knows? Put UN troops down there. What happens when Russia decides it's going to roll across with some T-90s and start doing some killing? who knows what happens then?
It depends on how far the U.S. wants to go with it, and what the Russians do. I think that we all know it's pretty simple. The Saudi Arabians are giving us cheap gas prices and going against U.S. oil companies and frackers. By doing this, they are helping the U.S. in trying to hurt Russia for its support of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. And so, and the New York Times reported as much. So we know that the reason that we have an economic war that is targeting not just Russia, but Venezuela, other BRIC nations, and other satellite and supportive states that are going to help Russia. So it's a way to put pressure on all of those energy-based economies that currently supply gas and oil to Europe. And the U.S. wants to take that place in the very near future. And so that's what that's about. And I think the tie between what's happening in the Ukraine and Syria, I think the U.S. would pull all support if they could get a backdoor deal with Putin to give up Bashar al-Assad, to let them take over, to let them build the pipelines to Qatar and through that to Europe. So, they need Russia to also, work the deal with Iran, the nuclear weapons proliferation treaty. They need they want to continually isolate, and it's in Israel's interest to isolate Iran. At least they believe it's in their own interest to try to stop these nuclear weapons deals. And at any time, the Russians could export nuclear weapons to a variety of countries that we don't want them to give them to, and there's plenty of them that are begging for weapons. So, that's the chess game that we're playing. They say that Vladimir Putin's playing chess and Obama's playing checkers. I think they're both playing chess, or that the U.S. State Department's really, pushing the envelope here. The U.S. has everything to lose in Ukraine and almost nothing to gain. An outdated, not modernized economy that's not going to integrate into the World Trade Organization or into Europe. It's going to create a humanitarian crisis that is going to be hard-pressed to pay back the $17.5 billion IMF loan without seizing assets. And they're already talking about this. That's one of the ways they're going to underscore, securitize these new bonds and these new promises to the IMF, because originally the IMF, you remember, they said that they would only give loans to the Ukraine if they were able to hold the country together, and that if the East did not succeed. Well, we're a long way from that, and the IMF
yet they're still giving them the $17.5 billion.
Yeah, and it's that could be a problem getting paid back.
But they don't. That's just it. They look at Greece. I mean, it's going to be the exact same story. I do believe the plan was, that's why Joe Biden's son's involved with a company that was going to profit from fracking Eastern Ukraine. But I think the original intent was.
Well, I think that's not so much them profiting. That is them selling it to those people that, look, we're going to bring these companies in and they're going to pay you. Okay, they're going to pay you. Chevron and Shell, we're not going to pay you. USAID can probably shell out a few $100 million without anybody noticing, but that these U.S. corporations are going to invest, and that is what they use to lure all of the people that in government, from Yatsenyuk to the other collaborators with Newland and gang, into supporting the Chocolate King and the Euro Maidan and wanting the EU, because that was their payday. So I think a lot of, and it's just, I guess, just a nuanced point. It's not so much that I think they're like, oh, we're rubbing our hands together. It's like, no, to get this through, they have to incentivize and pay people off. So
absolutely. And at the time, the president that was in there was too chummy with Russia, and we not only spent hideable hundreds of millions, we spent billions to facilitate the revolution, and now we're sitting here with an absolute mess. But I'm not under any. I have absolutely no doubt that it's a matter. I mean, it's no different than post World War II, when the Soviets were grabbing as much land and jockeying for position of influence throughout Central Europe, Eastern Europe, and into Asia. And I mean, it's absolutely no difference to what we're doing now. I mean, except the cell job is a whole lot better than it was that the Soviets had. The Soviets just rolled in and said, here you go, Romania. We're gonna put Ceausescu in there, and he's gonna govern. And but really, they're gonna all report back to Moscow. We're doing the exact same thing, just under the guise of saving these nations from themselves, right? Through these IMF loans and through the promise of security via NATO or directly from the United States. But they want territory, they want land, and they want a new fertile region to exploit. I believe that. I mean, the notion. I mean, this is why we're seeing us being bombarded by the need to be more involved in not only North Africa but Sub-Saharan Africa, because all being sold under the guise of fighting terrorism, because there's bases springing up there and the next big terror plans coming out of there. So this game that is now what 2001 to now 14 years going and no end in sight. If you sit back and take a look at it, it looks just like the same kind of jockeying for position of control and influence that led to the last 80 years of global governance that we've seen. So it's a breakup. It's a shaking of the chessboard a little bit. And you talk about Russia, ultimately, they have more nuclear weapons than anybody else on the planet. So if they wanted to sell some to Iran or North Korea or wherever, and it was in their strategic interest to do it, and this new Cold War has escalated to a place that the former KGB agent Vladimir Putin decided it was beneficial for his power base and for his country, absolutely. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they sell a few off?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It could be a bad deal all around. I think that they have some of the same concerns with some of the same people ending up with weapons that we might. But I don't think that this is necessarily a really bad development. I think we're going back to a non-unipolar war or world, and so of course there's bloodshed, and the human toll is often by history. And when you look at this and analyze it geopolitically, we forget about the people that are bloodied and killed and maimed in the name of political progress or political change or whatever you want to call it. But prior to the fall of Russia, I mean, we had you had a system where you had to have competition. Ian Walsh, who is a really great writer, and he brought up some great points in one of his recent posts on his blog, asking, is this necessarily a bad thing to have a multipolar war or world where that Russia and other countries have to, and the United States, all have to try to provide something that's better. Capitalism won out in the 1980s, and we thought that everything was finalized, and we were going to just move towards this new world order where we don't have any outliers. And you see the demonization of all countries that are outliers that don't want to be part of the international system, and how I think even the bankers are trying to figure out, with the SWIFT system, do we really want to isolate Russia out of giving us money, out of buying energy, out of buying this, or do we want to keep them, keep your enemies close and keep them in your system? Now that they have their own development bank, and that went live this month, and their own system that rivals the SWIFT system, you can actually put money out there into a system that is not controlled by the U.S. government, essentially, the Western world. So once again, we may have a place where people can find safe haven. You can't find it in Switzerland. You can't find it just about anywhere. Well, if that's what Russia has to offer, and that becomes an opportunity that people like you and I, that, hey, you know what, I don't really dig this whole forced vaccination thing, and I'm really tired of paying for these wars that don't benefit anybody, and I'm really tired of this system. Well, before if you look at before and after in Cuba, the quality of life for people there, even under communism, which isn't good, it's still better than what it was prior when they had a quote unquote capitalist society. So people are living better there now, although in a time warp, but have a better condition generally. Not everybody, of course, but overall.
You think Cuba under the last 30, 40 years of Castro communism, they're better off than they were when it was capitalist Cuba?
Individuals are. I mean, just like under, there's been a lot of studies under Saddam Hussein. Iraqi people had more money per capita. They had they were more educated. They had more relative safety. They had longer lifespans. They had less infant mortality. I mean, I could go down a list of 100 things that work better.
His governance wasn't communism. I mean, he was a dictator, and it was probably, I mean, it would have to lean towards more a capitalist government than a communist government when you talk about Iraq. I'm taking your word on Cuba. I've not done.
Well, I mean, if you even look back, I mean, we can also put history or the times into that kind of reference. I mean, there was a time in the great, glorious United States where, kids worked to the bone. And I've seen pictures, where you see these kids that look like they're literally 40. They're, 11 years old because they are working, 60, 70, 80 hour a week jobs.
Sure.
So, you could say, well, back then they didn't have all this regulation and blah, 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 blah. They didn't have the Obamacare and McDonald's and poison and GMO food. Yeah, but that didn't mean that the people that, lived, and we're talking about across the ethnic and geopolitical spectrum, comparatively lived a better life or a higher quality life. So I think that when you look at that stat, you can also, or you should also, consider the overall general, living conditions of people that live there and that were by and large exploited by capitalist society.
In a roundabout nutshell, I mean, you're just making the argument for competition. Competition breeds I guess excellence, and it's more beneficial to a society than a
one world order. Sure. Yeah, because in a one world order where there's nowhere to go and there's no other option, then you're just stuck with whatever you get because
that's called North Korea.
I would say that's called America today, where you have one party, the Republican Party that speaks for no one other than corporate interests and maybe some academic underlyings of the neoliberalism as the academic justification for it. But I mean, other than that, I mean, we just have more of an illusion, and that's what you said. To bring it full circle, that none who are more enslaved than those who believe that they are free but are not. And yeah, I think that's what we had. Where you have a choice. You can leave this country. I hear that all the time. Love it or leave it, man. And we do. You're not enslaved to the corporation nation. You can get out of the country. Relatively easy if you are so permitted, but if you don't have any outstanding tax issues or something outstanding, and I know that could be very subjective, you can still leave, and they'd be hard pressed to keep you here for any long amount of time unless there was really good reason to keep you here. And not to say that they can't, but by and large, most adults can leave this country if they don't like it, and they can absolve themselves from the I think it's $60,000 to $100,000 of debt that you accrue just from being born. My son took that really hard.
Their citizenship and going somewhere else.
And people do it every year, more and more actually. Every year are renouncing their citizenship, and I think that if the current trend continues and we do see this divide and we see more and more countries. I mean, we're seeing that potential divide happening in Europe itself. They're using this. This is kind of a make or break. They're using this whole Ukrainian crisis to justify a European army, to justify the European Union and European solidarity against Vladimir Putin. So he becomes this archetype of evil and the justification for the need to remilitarize Poland and to bring back maybe even conscription, military service. I mean, all those things that.
You mean the things that Ukraine just did?
Yeah, all those things. But
another round of conscription for its people to fight Russia.
Oh well, yeah, and well, and some people are doing that, and the rest of them are going to Russia. They've already taken in, I don't know how many million. It was estimated that over 2 million people have become refugees of the crisis in Ukraine that have now been seeked and granted citizenship in Russia, or you can go to Crimea if you can make it there, I imagine, and probably become a political refugee or whatnot.
Sure.
But yeah, so you now have Germany that is basically trying to convince its people that they should float and be the economic engine for the rest of the country, which many of those, like Greece, are unable to pay the money back that they need, and they have to borrow all money because they cannot print it into circulation. So there's obvious winners and losers in that scenario. So this tension with Russia, it brings about the need for unification, but it really also brings out nationalists. It brings out nationalism and the need for that.
That was going to be my point exactly. When you have this power structure that is trying to dominate the largest economy on the planet, which is Europe or the EU. I mean, that is 500 million people, the richest, most powerful economy when you add all those countries together. And when you have this group that is trying to put it under one blanket, financially, the governance, the financial governance, and the military, I think you will get a nationalistic push throughout these countries. I mean, we saw Scotland go for their independence last year. Greece, who is the poster child for austerity and IMF screwing over, is now elected, this Syriza government, which, they've already said no. Germany's already said no to their proposal on restructuring some of this IMF debt. It's going to come to a point, Doug, where you will get a country like Greece, maybe Greece itself, or Italy, or Spain. I mean, these Southern European countries that some of them are a military power, and all of them are in great amount of debt, and are looking at the EU, and they're looking at Brussels, and they're looking at the IMF, and their turncoat politicians are looking at these institutions for a way to save them. And inevitably, the way is always the same: debt, and the end of that is always the same. You no longer have a sovereign nation. You can call yourself Greece, you can call yourself Turkey, you can call yourself whatever you want, but you're under the power of Brussels. And with that, I think comes natural pushback in the form of many things, but specifically nationalism.
There's winners and losers. You see that the Golden Dawn, Le Pen, even UKIP being heavily demonized as anti-immigrant, right-wing nutbags and the like. And so the demonization campaign is evident, and so the media and the government are, in most of these countries, trying their best to delegitimize these voices, and they're not doing a very good job. Popular sentiment is against them. The question is, can they continue to keep the people in power? They want to maintain power, and they're going to figure out whether or not it's the best deal for them ultimately. Just like the Ukrainian government said, hey, the best deal is with Europe. Can't trust Putin. They can't trust this guy. Can't trust that guy. Let's go ahead and trust Newland and the EU, and hopefully we'll bring enough prosperity that'll keep us rich and in power. And so we're seeing some of those, I think, as they call them, birth pangs of the New World Order really shining through. So there's only two options when you look at Greece. They're either going to default inside of the Eurozone, which I don't know what that means. That means that they're just stuck, or they print their own money and they break out what they call the Grexit, or they borrow money from somebody else. Will Cyprus, will Russia, will China invest enough to pay off those parasites and bondholders like Goldman Sachs, which holds a huge chunk of the Greek debt? I don't know, but it's going to be interesting because we're seeing a clash of civilizations, and we're seeing where people are now understanding the power of the press, the printing press, and the press, and how when you don't have sovereignty, when you don't control that, you are at the behest of technocrats and other unelected bureaucrats that decide what's best for you. So, they have a hard problem, and that is that everybody wants more than what they are being divvied by the government. They're not producing. They have to beg other governments to print money for them.
Right.
And, that's a sad place to be when you are the cradle of civilization and monetary policy. And that's what Greece is. Democracy, all of those things came out of the Grecian formula. So anyway, yeah,
Doug Owen.
We got a couple make goods before we get out of here, and we got to get out of here in just a minute. I do want to thank the people that support this show. The one thing that makes it different is that you support it. So we want to make a good for Robert B. of Romeoville, Illinois. He gave us $20, and AJ gave us $33.33. He had a message. He said, "Thanks for your podcast, especially the live streams. I haven't donated in a while, but I am starting a new job soon, so I can afford this now," which is awesome. Good for you, my friend.
Awesome.
We're happy. He said, "How about an update on Mr. CIA in CIA, the dummy that was left behind at the terrorist attack that happened at LAX?" And actually, the guy's going to trial in the next few days, and he is expected to be charged with the death penalty to January 20th, or excuse me, the 2nd of 2015. The last thing I could find about it was the LA Times website reported that Holder, U.S. Attorney General Holder, is looking for that. So we may see something. Interestingly enough, I don't think we'll ever hear a word from Mr. Paul, CIA in CIA. So he will be like Jose Padilla and many others that we just never, like Timothy McVeigh. They just, they come out in trial. He'll probably be drugged up. If you get to see any footage, he'll probably be completely unaware of where he's at. And, well, there you go.
I agree.
All right, man.
You got to kick that. You got the studio calling you, Doug Owen. Thank you very much, everybody who was continuing to support the program. We'll be back next week with Doomcast number 80. All right, guys. Have a good night. Peace.